بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا عليم. Inshallah, today we will continue with the Prophet story series, and this is part 2 of Prophet Ibrahim. Just to recap, it's been probably we missed, I think, a week or two. It was July 4th last week, and things were kind of crazy. So the last we mentioned about Prophet Ibrahim, we went through the early stages of his story. We went through how he opposed his people and his father in the beginning, and he was expelled from his people, and how he broke the idols, and he accused the biggest one of them of breaking it, and then they get the king Namrud involved, and he even all of them challenge Ibrahim, and after the challenge of Ibrahim, this is kind of where we stopped, where they decide to throw him in a fire, alayhi salam. And so Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam is his people are their plot against him was to throw him in a fire, because at this point none of the words worked with him. We spoke about how they tried to argue with him about the stars, about the sun, and from his ability to speak and to argue and to explain himself very well, he was able to subhanallah shut them up basically, and he was able to have that, as Allah described, الحجة البالغة وتلك حجتنا آتيناها إبراهيم. And so this is the the affair, or the argument that Allah gave Ibrahim alayhi salam upon his people. And so when they reached this point, they decided to throw him in a fire. Same thing with the king. When the king told him, Ibrahim alayhi salam told him that Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who that brings life and death, and the king at that instant, he said, I bring life and death, and he brought two people that were in prison. He killed one of them and he freed the other. And so these are the incidents from the early part of Ibrahim's story. And beyond this point, his people decided his people decided to throw him in a fire, right? And this wasn't just like a regular fire. This wasn't just like, a few people. This was the whole entire tribe, or the whole entire nation plotting to throw him in a fire. And they made it into a festival where, even pregnant ladies, they would go and help out and say, oh, like I'm helping out. It's like an omen for good luck, for them helping, that this is their way of helping their gods, that they're helping collect wood, they're helping collect materials for the fire. And they built this giant fire, this giant like pile of wood, and this whole area was lit up. And the king Namrud and the people of the town decided to throw Ibrahim alayhi salam in the fire, and they threw him using this machine that used to be used for war, manjaniq, which is like basically a car that they would load up with a rock or whatever, and they would light the rock up, and they would throw the rock on forts and whatever, and it would break them. So subhanallah, they put Ibrahim alayhi salam and they tied him up into this minjaniq, and they threw him into this pile of lit up wood and fire, like straight up in the middle of the fire. And subhanallah, at that moment, Ibrahim alayhi salam, as he's thrown into the fire, the Prophet alayhi salam narrates to us, and he tells us that Prophet Ibrahim said that that Allah is his only one, and that his tawakkul is only on Allah. And subhanallah, from this instant we see Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam demonstrates the early stages of tawakkul. And when he's thrown into that fire, he's put into it, and khalas, the people don't see anything, and now they're happy and they're joyful that they brought victory to their gods, and that they made Ibrahim alayhi salam in front of everybody else. They made him basically an example to whoever opposes their gods and whoever opposes their way of life. Like subhanallah, nowadays we see people where it's like if something bad happens to them, or they're put into a punishment or jail or whatever, they're used as an example. Like, this is what happens when you defy whatever democracy or whatever. So they try, people, nations tend to do this, where they try to make examples out of people just to kind of explain a point. And so this is, subhanAllah, what happened to Prophet Ibrahim. And when he's put into this fire, some narrations say that he stayed in there for 3 days. And subhanAllah, after that he was thrown in there, people would be looking and they would see somebody moving. They'd see Ibrahim alayhi salam, you know, walking around in this pile, probably like a whole area that's lit up completely. And this is because Allah Azza wa Jal ordered the fire. قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. That Allah ordered the fire to be cold and also peaceful on Ibrahim alayhi salam. And, the fire, the only thing that the fire, destroyed was his hand. It was the ropes that were tied to him. So everything else, he was not harmed at all. Like his whole body, not a scratch, not a single burn, in full of fire. And the reason is, subhanAllah, is, Allah is the one, He's musabbibul asbab. He's the one that controls the affairs. So like, even us speaking today, Allah allows every word to come out. Allah allows every action to happen. And so from that point, Allah Azza wa Jalla did not allow the fire to burn Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibn Abbas narrates that if it wasn't for him saying to be peace and salam on Ibrahim, Ibrahim would have froze from death. Like he would have froze from how cold the fire would have been, because Allah ordered it to be cold. But subhanAllah, Allah's ability and Allah's his ability to be able to even make fire cold is, subhanAllah, like something just kun fayakun, however he decides. But this is just its own thing to ponder upon when we think of our own affairs. When you think about your own problems, your own injuries, your own issues, whatever is going on in your life, you remember that with Allah, things are like this. Sometimes, we might not feel them like that, but subhanAllah, He has the ability to solve everything, or to make anything go away like this, or, whatever He decrees happen just like this. And the key thing is the statement of Ibrahim, that he has tawakkul on Allah. Hasbi Allah, that he says, Hasbi Allah, that Allah is my only one that's sufficient. Alayhi tawakkalt, on Him I rely. For subhanAllah, when somebody like Ibrahim alayhi salam, as a young boy at this stage, is thrown and he is against everybody, and his words is Hasbi Allah, sufficient is Allah. Alayhi tawakkalt, on Him I rely. For subhanAllah, like this statement the Prophet narrates to us was his words. And this is what brought this type of victory. And so these people are seeing him now in this fire, walking around, praying. Some narrations say that it was that long. But one person in them is Lut alayhi salam. And Lut is seeing this. And when Ibrahim alayhi salam exits the fire and he goes back to his people, they all reject him except Lut. Allah says, فَآمَنَ لَهُ Lut. And then, imagine all these people, after all of this and everything they saw, they rejected. They rejected even that. And they kind of were like, this guy is a magician, or this guy is like, they just found all different types of excuses not to believe in Ibrahim alayhi salam. And then he says, Inni muhajirun ila Rabbi. I am, migrating to my Lord. And he left his people. Him and Lut left. And so Lut alayhi salam, at that time, he also becomes a prophet, and Allah orders him to go to a different people, and he was going to be the messenger to the people of Lut. So, just for, to stay on Ibrahim for this week, we'll skip Lut and we'll go back to it. But just for a time period to conceptualize, that was around the same time. The story of Lut happens around the same time as Ibrahim, and we'll see later on in the story when the angels come warning Ibrahim about what's going to happen to the people of Lut. So, these are two prophets sent to two different people at the same time. And, Ibrahim alayhi salam at this time, he goes to Egypt, and he was married to his cousin Sarah. A lot of books, or a lot of people know Ibrahim's wife's name is Sarah, but there's a shadda, Sarah. And she was known to be very beautiful, and she was known to be like among the most beautiful, humans or people. And the Prophet ﷺ tells us that she is, among the most beautiful, and that only Hawa ﷺ is more beautiful than her. And when she and Ibrahim ﷺ go to Egypt, in that area there was a very, mighty king, and he heard, subhanAllah, like the rumors spread, and news got to him that there's the most beautiful lady around, and that there's, subhanAllah, so news got to him that there's this lady that's really beautiful. And he ordered his guards to go to her and to kill her husband or kill anybody that's with her that like basically imposes a threat and bring her. And so when the guards came and Ibrahim alayhi salam, they asked him like, who are you? Like, who are you to her? And he answers, I am her brother. And this is where the double jeopardy or the double kind of explanation there. He's her brother in Islam, or that's what he means. But what's understood obviously is he's her brother and he's not her husband. In fear of the king killing him or punishing him for that. And so they take Sarah, and they put the king, subhanallah, is approaching her, and she's fearful, subhanallah. And her dua, she asks Allah Azza wa Jal that, Ya Allah, if I, by the right, that if I kept myself and kept my chastity away from everybody except my husband, by that, protect me from this man. Protect me from this man, and don't give him anything to me from me. But subhanallah, from this dua, the king tried to approach her, and he became paralyzed. And at this instant, subhanallah, he goes crazy, and he's telling her, like, basically, let go of me, what'd you do to me? And she, from fear of him like ordering the guards to kill her or punishment, she makes dua, Ya Allah, like, fix him, like let him heal him. And the king goes back to normal. And when he goes back to normal, he quickly goes back and approaches her again. And she makes the same dua again. Like, by Allah, if I, protected my chastity and myself, from anybody but my husband, Ya Allah, protect me from this man. And right away, again, he goes paralyzed. And same thing, he tells her, free me. And so she's also scared. She's still scared that something will happen. So she makes dua, and he's free. And then the third time, same thing, approaches her, and she makes the dua, and he goes paralyzed again. And he tells her, free me. And this time he tells him, like, I'll free you, but I'll make dua, but like, you're just gonna approach me again. And so subhanallah, she makes dua, and he's freed. But this time, from how fearful he is from her, he says, this witch, like, what did you do to me? And he orders the guards to take her and basically kick her out. And when he was negotiating with her, telling her to free him, he told her, like, oh, I will give you whatever you want, free me. I'll give you slaves, I'll give you money, I'll give you everything, I'll let go of you. And so when this happened, he gave her everything and he sent her out. So subhanallah, at this moment, Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sarah, they leave. And one of the when the king, he gives her a slave, and one of the slaves, her name is Hajar. And Ibrahim basically and Sarah, as they were getting older and older, they could not have kids. Sarah could not have kids. And subhanallah, this is where Allah Azza wa Jal and Ibrahim alayhi salam, he ends up marrying Hajar. Sarah, she gifts Hajar to Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he ends up marrying her, and he has a son from her, Ismail alayhi salam. And at this time, of course, Sarah, she starts to become very jealous. She starts to become very jealous of Hajar. She's, she has a baby, and like, subhanallah, like the jealousy is always in the heart of the woman. And Allah Azza wa Jal orders Ibrahim alayhi salam at this time to go to Mecca and to send his kids to Mecca, send Hajar and Ismail to Mecca. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, so around this area, they're geographically, they're around Palestine, so they were in Egypt, and they were around Palestine at this time. Because Ibrahim alayhi salam started in Babil, in Iraq. So they head south into Mecca, walking into the desert, and Mecca back then was known as Bekka, and there was nothing there. It was just a wadi. SubhanAllah, Allah says, biwadin ghayri dhi zara, in a valley with no vegetation, with no green, with nothing there. And so they head south to Mecca, and they go through this journey. And Hajar alayhi salam and Ismail is a baby at this point. They're not sure, why Allah Hajar's not sure why this is happening. And Ibrahim alayhi salam is quiet. And they go through this journey. You can imagine it's probably months to get down there, walking, No type of vehicles, no type of people. There's no rest stops, and there's no. It's a complete different area. It's the complete desert, subhanallah. And so they reach the wadi of Becca, and Hajar alayhi salam basically now is asking Ibrahim like why? She's basically like pleading him, don't leave me here. And he basically tells her like you stay here, and and he has to go. And subhanallah, like she's pleading with him, like don't leave me here. There's no food, there's no water, there's nothing, there's no people. It's just a plain desert. And at some point, she asks him, Allahu amarak, did Allah Azza wa Jal, was Allah Azza wa Jal the one that ordered you for this? And he basically says yes. And the second she heard this, subhanallah, like the faith that she has, is she realized this is an order from Allah Azza wa Jal. So khalas, she says, Allah Azza wa Jal, lan yudayyu'na Allah. That Allah Azza wa Jal would not, let us go astray. So that, she's not worried now about her food. She's not worried about her drink. She's not worried about nothing. She knows Allah Azza wa Jal is not gonna, put them in a bad situation. She has full trust. For subhanallah, when Ibrahim alayhi salam hears this, he's of course happy and he leaves. And when he leaves, subhanallah, now Hajar alayhi salam is left in this desert, in the middle of the desert with no food, with no water, and a little baby. And she is frightened, of course, subhanallah. Like it's not an easy scene. Of course, she has full trust in Allah, but there is this requirement to actually pursue something, to try to find water, to try to find food. And it's just this lady by herself, subhanallah, alayhi salam. And so, the resilience and the power that somebody must have to have that trust when you're faced with in front of you nothing. And so she puts Ismail alayhi salam as he starts crying, and she's looking for food, she's looking for people, for anybody. And on her quest, she goes up the mountain of Safa. And subhanAllah, that was the highest point she could see. And she goes up looking, trying to see if she can see anybody. And she goes and she sees nothing. And then she heads down, and on her way down, she sees another mountain in the distance. SubhanAllah, anybody who went to Mecca, you'll know it's a big distance. It's not nowadays, SubhanAllah, it's like there's full paths and everything. But she goes down and she climbs the other mountain of Marwa. And she's also looking in the distance, and there's nothing. And from the despair, you'd think logically a person, if they go up a mountain once and they saw nothing, and they go up the other mountain once and they saw nothing again, khalas, like these two mountains are done. Let me go look somewhere else. SubhanAllah, from the despair, she doesn't even know what to do. She just goes between the two mountains, back and forth. SubhanAllah. From how desperate she is to find something. And SubhanAllah, this is a great principle for us. When you have tawakkul on Allah, does not mean you don't work. She was running between these two mountains. She still put in the effort, and she still climbed these mountains. She went all the way to the top to look for anything, for any people, for any water, for anything she can see. And so this is a standing principle where, you tie your camel, you do your best to do, you have tawakkul on Allah, but you do your best to make sure the asbab are taken care of, the means are taken care of, so that Allah Azza wa Jalla will find a way out for you. And so she's doing this. And at that time, she hears a loud bang. And when she hears this, subhanAllah, she's thinking of her baby that she left behind. So she rushes back to Ismail, and she sees the water just gushing from under his feet. And subhanAllah, and then she starts to, gather the water so it doesn't overflood everywhere. And, subhanAllah, this act is why, the well of Zamzam is called the Zamzam. Subhanallah, this is the story of the well of Zamzam. And this is what started to make Mecca. And even till today, these are still the sha'air that we just came, the Hajj season just finished. These are the sha'air that we still celebrate. When you go to Umrah or you go to Hajj, you do the sa'i. 7 times. And subhanAllah, we sometimes forget to reflect that this is Allah Azza wa Jal celebrating the acts of this woman. Her motherly act. Here, subhanAllah, she's displaying to us, how much a mother cares for her kid, and to what means and ends she will go for him, and how Allah Azza wa Jal will take care of everything when you have the reliance. And so, yani, one of the biggest reminders is that if you, many of us, many of the parents or the older folks, where we have a lot of fear for our kids. In this case, it was very physical, and it was for food and shelter and the basic necessities of life. But some of us now have different types of worries for their upbringing, for their religious studies, for whatever. We might have all these different worries for our kids. And so we realize that, subhanAllah, that this tawakkul has to be there. Not to sit and say, oh, if they were in this Muslim country, they would be better off, or if they were in here, they would be better off. SubhanAllah, Ismail alayhi salam was alone in the desert by himself. And because there is proper tawakkul and proper effort, Allah Azza wa Jal made sure he was raised the right way. And so when it comes to our children, to our youth, to our people, if we actually have the right tawakkul on Allah Azza wa Jal, and we put in the right means, then subhanAllah, our affairs will be taken care of. Just like how the affairs of Ismail and Hajar alayhi salam were taken care of. And at this instant, after the well of Zamzam starts to burst, subhanAllah, Allah is the one who facilitates things. In Yemen, the tribe of Jurhum at that instant was having their well went dry. So they were having a scarcity of water. There was no water for them, and they were in search of a place. The Arabs back then used to just reside anywhere where there's water. And so whenever there's a well that's still, full of water, or there's any source of water, they would just go and settle there for a few days or for a few years, and however long they can last there. So this tribe of Jurhum leaves Yemen on a quest to find water, and they see birds flying in the air. And birds, subhanAllah, like the Arabs have such good, they can read the stars, they can read, they know how to interact with nature. And so when they see the birds, they know it's one of two things. It's either something is dead or there's water. Like, birds are not going to be flying in the middle of the desert for no reason. So subhanAllah, they went to check it out. They went to see, and they found Zamzam. And when they found Zamzam, from the nobility of how the Arabs were, like, they could have easily just, push Hajar out of the way and just, use the water however they want, and just, that's it, settled there, did their own thing. But subhanAllah, they went to Hajar, and they basically agreed with her that they would use the well of Zamzam, and they basically give her rights to it, and that they would pay her for it. But subhanAllah, Allah Azza wa Jal facilitated for them now a people to take care of them, a whole society and a community for them, for Ismail alayhi salam to be raised. And Ismail alayhi salam is raised between the Arabs, and that's why, subhanAllah, the lineage of the Prophet salam, he comes from Ismail alayhi salam. And these Arabs are, the children of Ismail are considered the Arab al-Musta'riba. They became Arab. So he learned Arabic, and he started to bond with the Arabs. Subhanallah, at this point, Ibrahim alayhi salam dropped off basically Hajar and Ismail in this wadi. And Allah describes this in Surah Ibrahim, that بواد غير ذي زرع عند بيتك المحرم ربنا ليقيموا الصلاة فاجعل, and this is دعاء Ibrahim, فاجعل أفئدة من الناس تهوي إليهم. Ya Allah, make the hearts of people incline towards them. تهوي إليهم وارزقهم من الثمرات من حيث, and give them from the gardens and from the crops, from all of it. And subhanallah, when Ibrahim alayhi salam is dropping off or leaving his wife and his kids, who he loved dearly. Imagine Ibrahim alayhi salam, there's narrations that he did not have Ismail till he was 68. So having a child at such an old age, and not even seeing him, he was still a baby, not even seeing him really grow up, and leaving him there, having that trust in Allah Azza wa Jal to leave him there, the first time, just turning around and walking away. Just imagine how he felt. And imagine how Hajar alayhi salam felt, how everybody felt. SubhanAllah, it's not easy. But when they had that proper tawakkul, Allah Azza wa Jal took care of the affairs. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, after this, would start to go visit them in Mecca every few years. How much time we have to before? How much time we have before Isha? Okay. So we'll wrap up this point and then we'll just go for questions real quick. So Ibrahim alayhi salam would visit them every few years, and he was back. He was back. With Sarah on the other side. Subhanallah, back in Palestine in those areas. For every few years he would come down to visit Ismail alayhi salam and visit Mecca. And inshallah next week we'll go through the story of the build of the Kaaba, and Allah Azza wa Jal ordered Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam to build the Kaaba. So inshallah, if there's any questions we can go through before Isha. I know there's a few minutes. Any questions, comments, concerns, reflections? خلاص إن شاء الله جزاكم الله خير. إن شاء الله we'll be on next week. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.